5a,
Rabbi
Yochanan. It's in the Gemara's. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines from the top. Okay, we got to get ourselves back in. We had one session where we lost a whole bunch because Yontif kind of was Bima Sameach, and that was good too. So we had a whole number of a sequence of a number of scenarios where Rabbi X, Kimat Lahai, when he came to the following pasuk, Bachi cried.
Oh, right.
And they usually had to deal with a recognition of if great things, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't listen to this person, how they're going to listen to me? Or in such a case, if this is what the pasuk says, what kind of hope is there for me? And of course, these were all great tzaddikim, and you can only imagine if they're saying, Vayaf Mir, what would we say? Then we had one piece of this. We went really off topic. And we got to talk about whether the Malach HaMavis grabs people ahead of time. And that was the piece that we ended with, okay? Which was a very difficult piece, okay? So now we come back to this long, and it's one after the other, and after some of the psukim are really very difficult, so you guys with the art scrolls may be helping us out, and it's going to take us all the way until the bottom of Hey Amid Bay. So if you look, it's a very big page.
Difficult because the wording? Or
the word psukim. It's actually difficult because of the psukim.
It's psukim for Tanakh.
It's psukim for Tanakh.
Okay, go ahead.
And the interpretations. Not difficult psukim. They're just difficult words.
Okay.
And more importantly, we don't have necessarily context. Okay.
Oh, that's true also.
So here we are on Hey Amid Aleph, and it's called Rabbi Yochanan Kimat Lahai Kra.
Yeah.
Right.
You know that?
Yeah, Rabbi Yochanan Kimat Lahai Kra Bachi. When Rabbi Yochanan came to the following pasuk, it's a pasuk in Eov. Eov itself was not a happy book, but this is Iseni Bo Labalo Chinam, that he I guess he seduced me or tricked me to swallow him. He seduced to swallow him for nothing. So, and once again, this is, I guess, HaKadosh Baruch Hu or the Malach speaking to Eov. He said, "Evet Shirabo Mesisimbo." If the actually, what is masisin?
I don't know.
How do they translate? But the saying is it to trick me or to advise me? Or to test me?
It incited me.
Okay, incited me. Correct. Okay. For masis idea. Correct. So if the servant has a master who incites him, and he is incited, takana yeshlo, is there anything that can be done? So in other words, if Eov is talking about the fact that this is the Hashem or the Satan who is inciting him by bringing all these things, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks kaviyachal as if he agrees to it, so surely what kind of God do we have? These are people who they're not questioning faith, they're simply saying the pasuk seems to be starkly in contrast to what it is, and we have to take a lesson from it, so surely we have to turn back to Hashem. Rabbi Yochanan, another story. Rabbi Yochanan came out to Lahai Kra Bachi. When Rabbi Yochanan came to the following pasuk, he began to cry. Same guy, same sefer. This is Eov Perik Tedvav. Heim b'kdoshav lo yamin. He doesn't trust his holy ones. Heim b'kdoshav lo yamin. And his holy ones he doesn't trust. So he says, b'kdoshav lo yamin b'man yamin. If he doesn't trust the people who are holy, who's he going to trust?
These are good questions.
These are questions that Eov is asking and questioning his fate. This is the story of Eov. It's a very difficult book to read because it goes on and on and on and on.
He's trying to figure it out. He never gives up his faith, but he's trying to figure out what's going on.
Correct. And the end of the story is even more difficult because the end of the story was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings back everything he lost. Gets him a new wife, gets him new kids, what happened to the old wife? Okay? So,
difficult.
Anyways, so this talks about that there are holy ones that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't trust and doesn't really believe in. Which means, and the implication is, that sometimes there can be a holy person who can fall off. That's the implication. Well, that's what Rabbi Yochanan is really trying to say. He's not questioning the pasuk in Eov. It means you can't trust yourself.
Oh,
that's really where this is going to go. You'll see in a moment. No, someone is the head of the class. What could be bad? He's guaranteed succeed, most likely to succeed. And the answer is sometimes these guys who are head of the class, and they say most likely to succeed, end up in Skid's Row, right? So the same thing here. These are the holiest people who follow Hashem's command, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't trust them. So Rabbi Yochanan says, "Well, what about me?" Right? And the answer is, yeah, you got to watch yourself. And here's the example, and it's not an easy example. Yom Echad, One day, there's a story about Rabbi Yochanan. He was walking on the way. Chazia lehu gavra. He saw this man. The have minkid te'ene. He was collecting figs. He was and shavik hanach demati, v'shakel hanach lamati. He took the ones that hadn't. Mati means to come. They hadn't come ripe yet. He took the ones that were not ripe, and he left behind. And he left behind the ones that were ripe, and took the ones that were not ripe. So Amalei, it makes no sense. You want to choose the ones that you can eat. So Amalei, Lav Hani Malan Tvei, are not these more better? Are not these ones better, the ripe ones? Why are you leaving the ripe ones behind and taking the unripe ones? So Amalei, Hani Le'urcha Be'inan Lehu. I'm taking these for the way, for a trip. And Hani Nachin, Vahani Lo Nachin. The ones that are not ready, the ones that are not ripe, we'll keep. Right. It makes all. I mean, it's a very simple, logical decision. You choose unripe tomatoes because you know they're going to ripen. You choose the ripe tomatoes, by tomorrow they'll be squished.
Sure.
So when Rabbi Yochanan heard this, I guess he was still thinking about the pasuk, or maybe this led to thinking about the pasuk. Amar says, "Hainu dechsiv han bikdosh lo yamin." This is what the pasuk means to say that he doesn't believe in his holy people. In other words, the things that are good today may not be good tomorrow. So if you're really trying to go the long distance, and the analogy is not a perfect analogy. The figs you want are the figs that are going to be able to be hardened and rough and tough. They may not be the nicest, purest figs, but they're going to be subjected to the wear and tear of a difficult, arduous journey. So the same thing, the comparison is, maybe the holy people can't take it. They come apart, they unravel. They're in a world that looks like it's full of injustice, a world that's full of temptations. And because they're so holy and pure and naive, they'll fall into the trap. It's the people who are, the rough and tough jungle people, they'll be able to withstand all the temptations. That's what he says, what the pasuk means. Okay? So the Gemara says, Ini, is that true? V'yahu talmida dehave b'shivavusa de Rabbi Alexandre. There was a young student, means a student who's not an older person, and he was still considered a Talmud, otherwise he would have been called a rabbi. Then we'd have his name. But he was a young scholar who was studying, who lived in the neighborhood of Rabbi Alexandre. V'shachav ad zuta, and he died when he was zuta, when he was young. Okay, this stood out in people's minds. The Amar, and probably Rabbi Alexandre said, "Iboy haimi rabbanan havechaye." If this guy had really lived the life of the rabbis, he would still be alive. In other words, why did he die? This was, in other words, God was punishing him for not being pure. Now, we just put down here as a premise that sometimes the very holy and the very pure get taken away early. Right? That's the pasuk in Eov, and that's the pasuk that Rabbi Yochanan is reflecting on. That's the pasuk, and that's the analogy about the unripe te'anim, the unripe figs.
Right.
So the Gemara says, Isa, and if you really believe that Rabbi Yochanan is correct, that sometimes the holy people God doesn't believe in, and He takes them away before their time, before they slip. That's what Rabbi Yochanan is really saying. God doesn't trust these people to be here, so what does He do? He cuts their life short. It's very difficult to even say this, right? But God terminates their life while they're still pure, before they go rotten. That's what it is. It's if you believe in that dilma mehein bikdoshav lo yamin have. So maybe this young scholar who died, maybe this is a perfect example of that God doesn't trust the people that are holy and took him away. We know he's a scholar, he was studying, so the fact that he dies young, maybe he was too good for this world, so to speak, right? So the Gemara says, so how do you know that? So the Gemara says, "Ahu mavayt b'rabosav have." He was kicking or cursing, or he knew that his rabbis. In other words, he knew that this guy, deep down, was not really true blue.
And his rabbi knew, or he kid himself?
Alexandre knew about this young scholar, that he was not from the Kedoshim, right? In other words, he came to learn, he studied, but he was not holy through and through. And as a Rasha, right, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu cuts the Rishayim short, right? and Mora is Yirah Shamayim, and Yirah Shamayim is viewed as Kavod Chachamim, says Rashi sometimes. That's the way we know about this. So therefore, if this person was cursing or kicking his scholars, his teachers, you see that there was some rot in the middle of this person. That's why Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's why he died young. It was a punishment for his averos. Not that he was so extra pure. He was just externally looked like a scholar, but deep down there wasn't really what it would look like on the outside.
This is according to Rabbi Alexandri.
This is Rabbi Alexandri is telling the story. It's a very funny story, a very unusual story. That person dies and people start saying, "Oh, like what happened? Like how do we reconcile this?"
Correct.
So the other part is people always try to understand when deaths happen to people who are not old. They try to kind of rationalize this.
Especially if they seem to be good people.
Especially if the guy comes to the yeshiva every day, comes to the Beis Medrash. So one way of looking at it would be to say he was God took him away because he was too good. And Rabbi Alexandroi said, no, I know this guy. He was not like he's not really as good as he looked, right? You know the term. It's not a nice term, I guess. He puts on the overcoat of frumkeit without putting on the underwear. Okay.
But it really is a rationalization afterwards, because he doesn't really know what a Kadosh Baruch Hu really, what his cheshbonot were.
Exactly. Exactly.
But correct. But Rabbi Alexandroi said that no, this is a case that happened.
That's something it tells us.
Right. Correct. That's right. The case is you have a young scholar. He comes to study. He dies young. Everybody says, what happened? So Rabbi Alexandroi says, if he had really been a scholar, he'd still be alive. In other words, because people are going to say tzaddik faralo.
Right.
And Rabbi Alexandroi is saying, well, he's not tzaddik kulo. Right? And when we can't really fathom and understand and rationalize God's world.
No.
But if a person is 100% tzaddik, it makes it even more complicated to understand. If you say, well, the guy is a good tzaddik, but he's got a little bit of Russia in him, right? So you say, so I understand God is punishing him now for what he did. Okay, at least I can understand what's going on. So that's what Alexandroi was saying. He was making fun of his Rabbeim. He didn't have the trust in his teachers, which means he really didn't trust God, which means it was pro forma, which really means it didn't impact upon his neshama, etc., etc. I'm not saying it's the best story, but it allows us to just accept and say the Rav Yochanan's interpretation of the pasuk, "Hey mikdosh of lo yamin," is what Eov is saying makes sense. That sometimes God takes away holy people before their time, even though they're so holy.
Right.
Okay.
That's the first one. Before Rabbi Alexandri say it's possible that Hashem would say, hey, like you say, who knows what will happen in the future?
But that doesn't make sense. I mean, in a way, it's very difficult to understand.
Sure, the whole story is very difficult to understand.
No, but this particular, that God was to cut short the life, because it's like preemptive. Even later on, he might be. He knows. God knows he's going to.
That's one of many reasons. That's one of many reasons.
You know what?
Very difficult to understand.
It's like saying, I'll be careful how I say this. I'm not sure the tape should be on. It's like saying that a sports star should stop while they're still ahead. Right? They get out of the limelight while they're still a star. Right? Stop playing when you're at the top of your game.
Yeah.
Not everybody does that. And if they don't do that, what they risk, of course, the possibility is they begin to come apart in a whole lot of ways, personal ways, right? Lamar, what's the guy's name? Black athlete who overdosed at the brothel. Lamar Odom, right? Which was a great basketball player, football player, I don't know. And then of course things went down, and he only had in his life was basketball. He mamish came apart. His marriage came apart. His life came apart. His success came apart. He was grappling at things, and he ended up basically. He's alive. I don't know how well he's doing. They had him on like in a coma when they found him and everything. But this was a guy he lost hope. So all I'm saying is that you need to know when to get out of the game. In this case, what we're saying, which is hard for us to accept, because
Hashem took him out of the game.
Hashem took him out of the game. Hashem stopped them when they were at the top of the game. Now, for us, that's hard to accept, because life, for whatever life there is of infinite value. We can't say that. We could never say we're going to stop someone at the top of their game. We can't even imagine how to say that. But at least that's better. Or that's the other alternative, saying that the guy was not really a tzaddik. Right. And apparently here, when this scholar died, people must have been saying, a young scholar dies, what does that mean for us? And the answer was, he was not 100% a scholar. Death happens, things occur, Doesn't mean that this was like a stroke from the sky. Just means he wasn't like he was no different than you and me, right? At any rate, that's the next piece of Rabbi Yochanan dealing with this pasuk, the story of the Tainim, and then of course the connection to this young scholar who dies, and then Rabbi Alexandroi talks about him. Okay, now next case, same Rabbi Yochanan, but different pasuk. Now we moved out of Eov. We moved now to Malachi.
He did a lot of crying, this Rabbi Yochanan.
Well, he obviously, well, first of all, he lived a long time, very sensitive, and I guess he really appreciated the psukim. Our problem.
Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, is it?
No, this is the Rabbi Yochanan who's featured throughout the Talmud Yerushalmi as the big Rosh Yeshiva of the Galil. I don't recall where he lives. He is the last great Rosh Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. Dies around the year 350 or so. He has a tremendously long life. No one really knows how long he lives. It seems to be really very long.
Rabbi Yochanan who always opposed
like hundreds of years.
He's the guy. Well, maybe.
It was
maybe
the brother-in-law of Rish Lakish?
Correct. The same. That's the guy against Rish Lakish, and yeah. So, you expect he's going to be ragish about the psukim. You and me, we listen to the Haftorah. What do we hear, right? If we listen, and the Haftorah is only short excerpts of bits and pieces. Our weakness is we do not study Tanakh, right? We all know that, right? I mean. I don't know, maybe we should study Tanakh instead of Gemara. I don't know.
I like to study Tanakh.
Yeah, Tanakh, correct, there's a whole different perspective, but you know something, when you read, it's easy to read something like Shmuel and Malachim, not easy, but it's readable, it's a storyline. You read something like Yirmiyahu, or Malachi, right, or Eov, it's very difficult. The story itself is not that often, it's mostly a lot of poetry. And try to make sense of it. What's going on here? It's depressing in case talking about the structure of the base of Mikdash or prophesizing it. Okay, and we don't have Nevi'im today, so it's even harder for us to understand, right, what has happened, what it's all about. So next pasuk, when he came to the following pasuk, he cried, which is Malachi Perigimel. V'karavti alechem lamishpat. I will call them to judgment. I'll be a quick witness. B'machashvim uv'menanim uv'neshboim l'sheker uv'oshke skar socher. And I'm going to be a very quick, a witness who testifies quickly against those who are doing kishuf and niyuf and cursing God. And niyuf is actually sexual sin. Nishbam la sheker, swear falsely. Oshke skar sachir, who cheat the wages of the worker. And God is saying, or the prophet is saying in the name of God, I'm going to be the one to testify against the Jewish people because of their social injustices. Allah has a lot of social injustice built into it, and this is God, the prophet, talking about the sins of the Jewish people. And who's going to be the judge? Who's going to be the witness? God. The prophet is speaking in the name of Hashem. So when Rabbi Yochanan said this, he says, "Oh my goodness gracious, Evet Sharabo Makarva Laduno." If a servant whose master takes him, and the master is the one who judges him. It'd be one thing if someone caught the servant stealing, and they bring him to the master. The master is the one who presses charges. The master is the one who's supposed to look after the servant. The master has everything to lose. And instead the master takes the servant to court and presses charges against him. And the master testifies against him. Takana Yeshbo. Can there ever be a hope for this kind of servant to ever be reconciled with the master? It's the master himself who pulled the rug out from under the servant.
It sounds very odd that God is going to be Kiviyachal, the aid, when he's the judge. He can't be both the aid and the judge.
So it's not really a heavenly court. Correct. God holds all the cards. That's exactly what Malachi is saying. It's exactly the point. God's going to be the judge and the court. God's going to testify, and he'll testify, and he'll be the one to bring down the justice against us.
He's no
You're right, correct.
That's why.
That's exactly what he's saying. He said, "Can you imagine that? Normally, you have to have a witness, you have to have a judge, you have to assume there's some kind of modicum of real justice. Here, how can the servant escape? How can what hope will be there?" The master is supposed to be looking out for the servant, holds all the cards, Right? If he's got a problem with the servant, what should he do? He should deal with himself. Was he schlepping the servant to court where he will be locked up, he'll lose him?
Yeah.
Right.
Plus, but the pasuk's really clear, right? The karafti elechem lemishpat. I'm going to call it if I eat the aid, and I'm going to be the aid.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's what the pasuk says.
Clear.
Yeah, that's why I was crying.
And this is the Haftorah for. This is the Haftorah for Shabbos Shuva, Shabbos Hagadol, Shabbos something or other. No?
I guess Malachi definitely comes up somewhere, but
You see.
he's the one about Eliyahu and whatever there. He's gonna reconcile
sure.
the
So it's
children.
it's Haftorah Shabbos Hagadol.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right, I don't remember this part of it, but yeah.
This is what Perek Gimel.
Yeah, Paragimel. Pasuk Hey,
Yeah. These.
according to this.
It's Perek Gimel.
Yeah,
Okay. Yes.
Pasuk Hey. It looks like I just wrote over it.
Right.
Is that not the Pasuk Hey?
Which pasuk Hey you said? I wasn't listening.
Yeah, unless it's Chet, because I just wrote over it, so it could be Chet instead of Hey.
So it's a- Say.
It's Hey.
Hey?
It's Hey.
Yeah.
It's Hey. Yeah. V'yorvel Hashem and Chas Yudav Yerushalayim Kimei Olam Achshanim Kadmonios. V'korafti Alechem Lamishpat. Okay. So Malachi says, you bring back korbanos like in the good old times, and then I'm going to come near to you for judgment, and I'm going to be v'yisi eid memahir b'machashvim u'b'manafim nashkom l'sheker v'yoshke schar sachir almanav v'yasom matei ger v'lo yiruni amar Shem tzvakos. Right, and nonetheless. Right, so it looks like I'm going to judge. I'm going to be the witness, but nonetheless, I'm not going to throw you away. That's the good news about this, because the next pasuk says, "Ki ani Hashem lo shanisi v'atem b'nei Yaakov lo chlisem." I haven't changed, right, and I haven't thrown you. I haven't consumed you. L'mimei avosechem sartem echukai v'lo shmartem. From the days of your ancestors, you went away, and you haven't kept my commandments. Shuva alei v'shuva aleichem. Is it Shabbos Shuva? Maybe Shabbos Shuva. Amar Shem tzvakos v'amartem b'men nashuv. And you say, how will we come back? Right? Hayikba Elokim Adam. This is pasuk Chet. Will a man rob God? Katem kovim osi. But you have robbed me. Why? Ki v'amartem b'mek vanucha. And you've said, in what have we robbed you? And the answer is Hamaser ve'atruma. You haven't given my son truma, and so forth and so on and so on. And then it goes on, and the end of the parak is, of course, V'heshiv leivavos leivavonim ki pendavavi kesi alechem. Oh, I'm sorry. In the pasuk before that, Hinei anochi shlech lechem es Eliyahu lefnei bo yom Hashem hagadol v'hanora. Shabbos hagadol. There we go. Okay. So, at any rate. So he comes to this pasuk and he says, "No hope for us," and he begins to cry. All right. Now, Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai. Here's Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai.
I don't understand this because he lived much before.
Okay, so the answer is he didn't walk in and comment on the story. They're quoting from Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai. And they're including it at this point. In other words, there's obviously somehow an editor who's thrown things in from a different place. You're right. It looks anachronistic.
But he lived hundreds of years before. Right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay.
He obviously had something to say about the subject,
right.
Did he?
But in other words, it's Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai referring to the same pasuk.
That's what I'm saying. Is he talking about the same thing?
The same pasuk. So Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, Oy lana sheshaka aleinu hakatz hakasav kalos kevachamuros. The pasuk seems to compare the simple sins to the more serious sins.
Right. The simple sin of extorting the wage of the worker.
Correct. To things like probably kishuf and nishbal sheker. Right. So in other words, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to testify everything. He's got it all together. He's not just picking anything out, but whether you were simply just mistreated your worker or mispaid him, whether you're mena'ef, you're an adulterer, or mechashef, you're a sorcerer, all of those are equated the same way. Kadosh Baruch Hu throws the book at you.
You know, we had just earlier learned about the mechashef of that Shaul went to see.
Right.
You're right. That's right.
And like there was no mention of this kind of terrible punishment associated with that.
He died the next day. About the witch.
Yeah.
There's no punishment of the witch. The punishment here is of the fact that people are going to witches. God is saying
people who use
this. People commit sexual sins every day.
Correct, but
what does that mean?
But the Bechashef here, is that referring to someone who is the actual witch themselves, or the people who use the witches?
I don't know. Could be both. I don't know. I'll be swift witness against the sorcerers and against the adulterers.
Yeah, here it sounds like the sorcerers themselves, right? But
so I believe that probably there were people who were professional witches and people who dabbled in witchcraft.
Oh, for sure.
It's like they're professional sportsmen and people
spiel
to real shitty.
How do you become a witch?
Today you got all the street, you see all these palms, whatever. It's the same.
The answer is they're
That was their livelihood.
So I don't know. We'll find out next week about little witches and goblins. Okay. All right.
That's a big business.
Okay. All right. This is this. By the way, this Halloween is not our holiday. Okay?
No, I know. I'm just making it.
Here comes Reish Lakish. You were right.
Yes, now Reish Lakish. Yes, and these are all a confluence of people about the same pasuk. Only now they're dealing with a different part of the same pasuk. What was the pasuk here? Where's the pasuk again? And the continuation, which we don't have, is V'oshke Schar Socher we have.
Yeah.
And that is Almana V'yasom. They're going to oppress the widow and the fatherless. Umate Ger. And they turn aside the stranger. V'lo Yeru'uni.
Dino shall Ger, I think. Eh? No, because that's what Reish Lakish says. Or what does the actual pasuk say?
Mate Ger.
Mate Ger. Eh? Okay. So I was looking at the Reish Lakish 2 words later. He says
Dino shall Ger.
Yeah.
So he's not just quoting the pasuk. He's making a statement. The pasuk is Mate Ger. Okay. And by the key here to Mate Ger is it's spelled Mem Tet Yud. How would you say Mate to turn aside? You normally spell in Hebrew Mem Tet. Hey. So here Malachi says Mem Tet Yud, which is what the drash of Reish Lakish is going to be. And then it says V'lo Yeru'uni, and they don't fear me. It's the end of the pasuk. So while we threw in the beginning of the pasuk Rav Yochanan crying about Machashvim and Menafim and the Eved and the Master, we got a bunch of other people who also talk about this pasuk get thrown in. Say no, not all necessarily need to be the same time. Even though Reish Lakish is a contemporary of Rav Yochanan, doesn't mean that they were said at the same time. Yeah. Someone kind of threw all these things. All these stories are different pieces. Someone decided to collect all the cases, all the stories of people who began crying when they came to the Torah.
It was Ravina that did the editing, right?
I'm assuming that. Well, it could have been before Ravina. We're assuming Ravina edits and Rav Ashi edit the entire Talmud. What does editing mean? Do they really write it? Do they combine it? Or they're the ones who kind of make sense of it and put all the pieces together and reduce maybe overlaps?
Okay.
Like any editor, how much editing does an editor do? Depends, right? But he's not the writer.
Right.
So at any rate, so Reish Lakish says, "Kolamate dino shoger." Whoever turns or misdirects the judgment of a ger, and the ger was, of course, a person who had no family, so he was very susceptible to being taken advantage of. No one would stand up for the ger because there was he had no landsman, right? So the ger and the asom and the almana always go together. The unfortunates. So if you're going to take advantage and you're going to mistreat the ger and misjudge him and take his money away unjustly, ki'ilu matei dino shamala. It's if like you're misjudging the Almighty, right? That's the statement of who? Reish Lakish. What's it based upon? The continuation of the pasuk, which you don't have before, but after was Schar Socher Yasom V'Almana, it says umate ger shenemar umate ger. And here's the drash, umate ksiv. It says umate with the yud.
Right.
So in other words, mate means mati, turning to me. As if Malachi is saying, and you are turning to me, not just turning.
Right.
Which means mate ger mati. I don't know if it's really grammatically correct, but the drash is the yud means to me. It's a possessive, right? Shulchani. Right, Sfari.
Yeah, no,
right?
no question.
It's a drash because it's spelled the same way.
Right.
Correct.
in Malachis.
With spelled with the yud. So in other words, what he's saying is that if you misdirect the ger, you're misdirecting me, mati.
Yeah, look.
In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu, correct. Dino Shemalo. That's what he says.
The spelling we had was that Tzere changed it to a chirik, but the idea is there, right?
That's fine.
the
But we
idea.
don't have
You don't have
Right.
Seiris.
Yeah,
Seiris are all there. That's
yeah.
correct. Okay.
That's what we decided to do.
Okay. Now, having said that, we still have another drash on this pasuk. This is the end of the pasuk. Same
Right.
pasuk.
Right.
Because after it says Umate Ger, it says Velo Yeruni, they don't fear me. I'm Rav Chanina Bar Papa. I don't know when he lives before, after, where, whatever. Kol Osa Davar Met Charepo. Whoever does something and has regret, Mochlim Lo Miyad. God forgives him right away. So all you've got to do is have second thoughts about it, and the slate is wiped clean. Amazing. Okay? Why? Shenemar velo yeruni. Because in listing this litany of sins, what does Malachi say? They do this, and they don't fear me. Which means, oh yeruni mochlim lahem.
Beautiful.
Okay? So yeruni mochlim lahem miyad. Okay? God would forgive them right away. So the fact, because obviously, what do you mean v'lo yeruni? Obviously, we see if they're sinning here, they don't fear God. It must be that they now, if they were to fear God, it would change. It would be a game changer.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah. Next guy, and we go back to Rabbi Yochanan again. Okay, not the next guy, it's Rabbi Yochanan still. Still Rabbi Yochanan starts with crying at Psukim. Rabbi Yochanan, this is Koheles. Okay. Also a difficult chapter, a difficult book. Oh, you just finished learning it, right? So you're going to help us. Rabbi Yochanan kimati lahai Bachi cried at this pasuk. Ki es kol maseh is the end of Koheles. Ki es kol maseh Elokim yavi b'mishpat al kol nelam. For all the works of God, He will bring to mishpat, even al kol nelam, even everything that's hidden. So in other words, the focus. Well,
I don't remember it.
okay, it's the end. It's like it's when everybody wakes up and they're still doing this long Koheles.
I probably didn't wake
Good
up.
days. Eric, good
It's
days.
like a pasuk or two before the end.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. I can't remember it.
Pasuk Yud Pasuk.
Yeah, Pasuk Yud Dalet. Eric, good days.
Correct.
Pasuk Yud Dalet.
It's the very end, the last pasuk in Koheles.
Is it?
Yes. Right. He says, "Sof Gdovar Kol Nishmas Elokim Yirav Sesasar Shmavat Kizeh Kol Adam." Then there's one more pasuk. Yet Kol Maseh Elokim Yavi B'Mishpat Al Kol Nelam Tov. For God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it's good or whether it's evil. And then we say again, Sof Gdovar Kol Nishma, because we don't want to end with this last pasuk in Koheles because it's a very negative pasuk. But the very last pasuk in Koheles, which is chapter 12, verse 14, says that God is going to bring everything into judgment, whether it's clear or whether it's hidden, whether it's good or whether it's bad. Well, that's scary. So then we say, Self-Torah Kol Nishmat, looking at fear God. Fearing God is more positive. So, but this pasuk is a real tearjerker, and that's why we actually say Self-Torah Kol Nishmat again. So Rabbi Yochanan got to the pasuk, he began crying. Because what does it say? God is going to bring everything to judgment, even everything that's hidden. Things that are hidden, we don't know that we did wrong. Now, the simple pshat of hidden means it's hidden from people. People don't know about it. The drash, as Rabbi Yochanan is understanding it, or the extension means it's not, I don't even know I did it. Right? So can you imagine, I'm going to be subjected to judgment without knowing I sinned. Right? So, Evet Shirabo Shokelo Shkogos Kizdonos Takona Yeshlo.
Yeah.
So,
He's having the same problem.
same question. If God judges us with, like the servant, the master judges the servant for the mistakes that were done unwittingly, as if he did it intentionally, how the servant can't win. So that's another case where Rabbi Yochanan cries. And on this, there's a little bit of an extension. So Gemara says, what is the word my al kol ne'elam? What does it mean on every hidden thing? What could be hidden that you don't realize you're doing it wrong? What'd you do? You blew past a speed zone and you didn't see the sign? You probably saw the sign. You just didn't slow down. You thought the cop wasn't there. What could it be so bad that you didn't realize it was? So you think it's probably ritual sins, right? But the Gemara here feels it as interpersonal sins. Because Koheles is primarily dealing with people and people, right? It's not just about God.
Yeah.
So therefore, God is going to bring you to judgment for sins that you did against your friend, even though you didn't realize it was a sin. What could you be so bad that you didn't know it was a sin? So the Gemara says, Amarav, Ma'al Kol Ne'elam, Amarav Ze'ahore Kina Bifnei Chaveiro V'Nemas Ba. Person kills a louse. Now, for us, lice are kind of something that we don't normally have. Right. But it's a pest. But in those days, lice were kind of like, I don't know.
Friends, pets?
No, like mosquitoes at a picnic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like mosquitoes in the evening. Like
Yeah,
mosquitoes in the evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? So you can't get away from them.
Yeah,
It's just a natural hazard. So therefore, if you found a louse, you'd want to kill it. But lice were probably everywhere. So it didn't stand out. It didn't stand out that badly as in our society when a kid comes home with lice.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Which, just because we don't have lice, because we have better hygiene and we clean ourselves more. But so in those days where many people had lice, right? Gemara talks about whether kinim or a chatzitza for a woman going to the mikvah, because it was common, right?
Oh, is it?
Was it common?
Is
it is, yes.
Sure.
Yes. It was tremendously common.
Get away from them.
You couldn't, right? Because they didn't have baths. They had Roman baths at best. They did not have pesticides to get rid of an infestation, right? So once it got into your hair, unless you cut off the hair, there's probably very little way to get rid of it, right?
First of all, they weren't just head lice; they're body lice, all kinds
of lice, right? Okay.
Lousy.
No, really. I mean, the clothing, the beds, the straw, all this stuff. But please.
Yeah. So at any rate, so therefore, you found one lice and you kill it, and your friend kind of bugged out, literally, okay? And you didn't realize how badly they would take it. So that's you thought you're doing something good. You didn't realize that if you kill this louse and the person watches it, they're going to feel nimasba, they're going to feel disgusting.
Especially if you killed it on him, maybe.
However, okay. Okay, Ushmuel Amar, and here's another one, which also shows the difference in society. Zeharok b'fnei chavero v'nemas. Okay, this you spit on your friend, and the person.
Or even in front of him, maybe, right? But you think really b'fnei means in his face? Maybe it means in front of him.
I don't know if it's in his face. I don't know.
I'm just trying to be.
So in the shuls they used to have the spittoons.
I know.
So you went to spit in the spittoon. You went to spit in the spittoon.
Huh?
You had them in shuls?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure they did. People everywhere.
I imagine it's like because Mohammed Schus, right? You don't want to think the worst, you want to think the best.
Right. What was the best here? Best is getting rid of your spittle.
Right.
Best was you wanted to daven, you wanted to speak, you wanted to talk. It was inappropriate. That was actually considered proper etiquette. That's hard. It's hard for us to imagine.
The people had chewing tobacco. It's different.
Yeah, exactly.
That chewing tobacco, and they also had chronic kinds of coughs they couldn't get rid of.
Baseball.
They didn't have antibiotics.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
So whatever it was, they may have had phlegm and this, and who knows all kinds of respiratory ailments.
And they couldn't afford the Kleenex, so.
They didn't have Kleenex, right? They didn't have anything. So all I'm saying is, bottom line was this was considered acceptable behavior.
Yeah.
Now, but on the other hand, some people took offense. Okay. So zarok b'fnei chaver v'nemas. In other words, these are the minor things that you think are not so bad. And that, nonetheless, you will be held accountable.
Right. How
you offended your friend, even though you couldn't even imagine it would have happened.
Yep.
Okay.
In Oleinu, there's a part there where they spit.
No.
They spit.
They don't spit.
What?
It says lehevel rik. So the Chabad says ruk.
When they add that bracket.
They say rik. They say nothing. They say spit, which is
ruk.
Yeah. So meaning of Chabad, so they spit then. It doesn't say that.
But it obviously goes back to the time when people normally spit in shul.
Yes.
I guess. I don't know, but
I don't know.
But that's.
Anyways, there's the example. Okay.
I told you what they did. We don't, but they did.
I will say that part. It's in brackets.
It was censored out for the censors in the time of the.
All right. Anyways, back at the ranch. Okay. So we have this long. So we're still back with this discussing, understanding what's v'ne'elam, what can be hidden that you think you're doing something good and it's not so bad, and you think it's good and it is bad when it's spitting, when it's killing the louse, and so forth. Okay. Now. And the pasuk continues. Once again, so these are the last words of Koheles. Kiskol masel kim yavui b'mishpat al kol ne'elam im tov im ra. Whether it's good or whether it's bad. So what does it mean that it's good? Either it's good or it's bad. How can something be good and be bad? If you're doing something good, The case of killing the louse is just not bad. It's not good. It ends up being very bad. The case of spitting is not good. It ends up being very bad. How could something be whether it's good or bad? Either it's good or bad. So the simple pshat is that's what Koheles is saying. But now they try to find how is it possible that someone could do something good and really be so wrong. So the Gemara says as follows.
With the Eitz Hadas Torah, I thought I learned that nothing is really good or bad. Everything is a mixture of everything.
Correct.
Yeah,
so the answer is yes, but then you have extremes where someone looks very good and ends up being very bad.
Okay.
You're right. Not every good is completely good.
100% pure good.
You could be a B level good, an A level good, right?
Yeah.
C level good, right?
Definitely
And if it fails good, it becomes more bad than good. But this is where it looks really good and
But
it
it's
becomes
really
really
bad.
bad. Here. So what does it mean? So Mayim Tovim Ra, Amar Dvei Rabbi Yanai Zanosin Tzedakah Le'ani B'Farhesia. This is a case where you give tzedakah to a poor person in public. Which you've embarrassed him.
Absolutely.
Okay, so in other words, you've done something good, but by giving it in public, you've actually caused him to lose face.
Sure.
Kihad the Rabbi Yanai, in the case of Rabbi Yanai, the Chazia Lehu Gavra the Koyav Zuzei Ani B'Farhesia. He saw a case where a guy gave money to a poor person openly. Person needed it, but he gave it to him in front of everybody. Amalei, and who says? Rabbi Yanai says, Mutav lo yavislei, mehashta diavis, mutav lo yavilei, mehashta diavislei v'kisafte. Better you shouldn't have given him than given him now and embarrassed him. He lost his self-dignity. You've reduced his level of self-dignity because everybody saw he took a handout. Right? 8 levels of tzedakah and Rambam, right? When the giver doesn't know the receiver and so forth.
That person who gave the tzedakah, he probably didn't think he was doing anything bad.
Okay, well, he should have thought more.
This is what we do today, right? We start the time around.
So the answer is unfortunately, part of the I don't want to say illness. Part of the difficulty of being a meshulach is you lose self-dignity. Right?
For sure.
People, someone explained this to me. Most people that start out by putting their hand out, most people probably had a real need. But many of them, unfortunately, when the need is solved, still continue doing this because A, the money is good, and B, they've lost their self-dignity. Once you do it, once you stand on a street corner and ask for a handout, and you've lost that inability to do so, then it's easy to keep doing it. And why shouldn't you do it? And it's not reportable, and there's no taxes, and people will give you. So they go on doing this even though they have less or no need. The Mishalachim unfortunately become very hardened. You've seen Mishalachim.
Yeah,
they come around.
They are.
They are. And they come into the shul, and you give them. They don't give you. They put their hand in you. They argue with you. You didn't give them enough. You didn't give them more. Where are you? What's going on? And you have to say to yourself, how difficult it is. What does it do to this kind of person? Can you imagine? I'm not like it's not like I have a soft spot for Mishalachim. I think unfortunately they're bleeding our town of a lot of good money that could go for internal resources and help internally our own poor people. Quick, there's millions of dollars leaving the city when Mishalachim come through, and they come in droves. But the reality is, it's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. Think of it.
No,
One travel the world for 4 months, town to town, city to city. Every day sleeping somewhere else, and then you have to know who the driver is. You got to pay the driver, and you got to know who to go to, and you got to shoes up people.
They make okay money.
Sure, they make good
But
money.
it's not an easy way to make a living.
They make good money. They make good money. They have expenses, by the way, because they have to pay the
They
driver.
get 75% of what they collect.
Well, whatever. I don't know the percentage. Whatever they get. But I'm saying the bottom line is that this is not an easy thing to do. If anyone thinks that you want to become a mashul to make money, go ahead.
No, it's
Especially
grading.
people look at you a certain way, that it's not a...
Toronto and Montreal, you say that they're the two target cities in North America.
They are.
Besides New York.
Big cities,
They are big city. And
Toronto and Montreal.
correct.
Besides New York.
Correct. And by the way, when they come around with the petek, the letter, it means all it means is they've done a rudimentary check.
Yeah, they don't
The
check.
guy is not an axe murderer.
Maybe.
Well,
What do they check? They don't check anything.
correct.
They don't check much of anything.
And they also check that he has not been around in the last 12 months. They will not give out the letter within the course of 12 months. You've got to be a year spaced apart. I'm sorry?
Nobody reads the letter. I mean, they come and show you this green piece of paper.
Yeah?
Nobody reads the letter.
But read what the letter says. It says very little.
Right.
Yeah,
so
but
And the process...
These are the letters from last year, or the year before, from 3 months.
Well, I can't help if you don't read the letter. But the letter that they get, whatever that is, the letter is only good for X number of weeks from the day they sign it, and they actually do check. I can't tell you what the guy shows you, but the office that grants these things, which by the way charges money too. It's not
they do make a few bucks.
Yes, they do make a few
I
bucks.
have no idea, but
They
making money.
You got to pay someone who's got to sit in an office and make calls. Okay, someone's got to make a rudimentary check that this.
It's the phone to actually Israel or whatever.
Yeah, that the guy really has, like, I don't know, someone that someone, I don't say he's legit, but that he's got some kind of
You
story.
think they make a phone call? I don't think they do that.
Yes, actually, I think they do. Or they do contact
I heard
minimally.
that they do make a phone call.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
Okay. In fact, I don't know who's there. There was once a person was there who was actually left the job because he was attacked by some of these guys because they didn't want to give him a letter.
Because
These are tough guys. They're very hard. They're hard because that's the business. Okay. Anyways, but here we're talking about someone who's giving tzedakah, not to a hardened person who doesn't have self-dignity, someone who has a lot of dignity.
Right.
Right? And there are people like that in our community. There are people like that in every community who've fallen on hard times, who people don't know about, who still want to maintain their dignity.
Absolutely.
Giving that kind of person an open donation in the middle of everybody, right, reduces that. And that's what happened here in this case. He says, in this case, better you shouldn't have given him the money. All right, and that's one case. That's one example. The next example is a little more risque, or a little more prurient. Rabbi Shalomar, what's the case of where something good could look really bad? No sense takalisha b'seiser. It's when you give money to a woman quietly. You get people, but someone obviously saw it.
Oh, so
right,
and
right. The komaisi de chashada brings a case of questioning. The questioning is either suspicion upon the giver, the suspicion upon the woman, obviously, right, and that's a reputation that can't be recouped. So that's the second interpretation. So that's the exact opposite case where you're giving it quietly, but the people are such, and the scenario is such, that giving it quietly raises more questions than if you give it publicly. Right? Rabbi gives a third example, which is actually very semi-humorous. It's meant to seriously, obviously. Rabbi Omar is it's where you send to your wife on Erev Shabbos meat that has not been trebered yet, has not been prepared, has not been cut up. Right? The meat that you buy in Sobeys is ready to go. Right? The meat it's kasher, it's salted, it's trebered. It's trebered means where they take out the fats and they take out the veins, deveined. Okay. Nikur. So there are two. Well, if you do the hindquarters, you be taking out the gid nush and a lot of other fats. They take out two things, and every piece of meat has some that has to be taken out, and it's all Masorah. There are thick veins and arteries that are taken out, and then there are certain fats that you can't eat. Most of the fats are in the hindquarter. In North America, we don't process hindquarters; they all go to treif. When they sell you spare ribs, it's not spare ribs; it's a fake. Okay, because spare ribs are not processed kosher. If you go to Eretz Yisrael, you can get actually hindquarter.
Definitely.
Okay.
There was actually one place, I understand now, that Sephardic Hesher, Bisra meats in Hackensack, and they actually do
Treber the back.
Never understood why we don't do it.
Why we don't? It's a lot. I'll tell you, it's a lot of work.
I think it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Are they richer in Israel? That's what I've never.
No, there's less meat.
3 or 4 hours of work.
There's less meat.
They can't get
They can't. There's not enough meat in Eretz Yisrael. So if you have an animal that you have the meat, you want to do the entire animal.
Even though it'll take longer.
Correct. Even though it takes longer.
It's 3 or 4 hours.
It's serious stuff. And I have to tell you something. I once watched trebering. I once had a butcher show me trebering many years ago, so I went to see it. And even though we don't do the hindquarter, there is a part that's either the beginning of Gid Hanasha or leads to the Gid Hanasha that has to come out. That's related to Gid Hanasha. It's right towards the very last part that we do.
Well, I understand. If you don't do it properly, you end up to Gid Hanasha. Instead of having like filet mignon, you're going to have like spaghetti, chop suey.
Yeah,
you got to be able to cut it and do it properly.
Yes, you have to know what you're doing. There's a chachma to knowing how to do it. in order to make sure the cut is not ruined, and B, you've got to do it that you can get it out, because God, honestly, you won't know and I won't know, and the mashgiach, if he's not there when he's doing it, will not know, because you got to get into the meat to pull these things out.
Yeah.
It's like pulling out rubber bands.
Bisra meats in Hackensack.
Good. Okay, we're going to go on a trip. We're going to get some bisra meats for your CEO.
So we'll get some quail eggs.
Yes.
Actually, I'm not going to serve quail eggs at the
Okay,
CEO.
good. Well,
Should I?
whatever. It's up to you. It's got no you. I'll eat
It's got no you.
I'll eat the OU. Okay. Now, at any rate, so here's the case. So Rava says, if you send your wife this kind of hard work to do before Shabbos, it's hard for us to imagine that women would actually have to do this preparation. Right? It's not just taking a rib steak out or taking a piece of chicken out and putting it in the oven. Right, and you put it on convection so it goes quicker, and put a little paprika on top and to make it go. This was obviously manual work. It's Erev Shabbos. What's going to happen? She's not going to do it properly. She's not going to do it correctly. So the meat is not going to be it's not going to be trebered correctly, or if she's not doing the treber, she's doing the salting. Remember when every woman had a salt board?
Yeah,
right. Salt tray. Yeah, everybody. Correct. You used to teach in Beis Yaakov.
How to salt it?
How to salt it. No one knows how to do it anymore. Okay. So that's just part of living in a modern society. It's like standing in the Sobeys counter, the deli counter. Mashiach knows. Mashiach knows. Yes. So at any rate, the bottom line is, and they are salting in Sobeys in the back.
There doesn't salt at the butcher. Salted in Sobeys or in the
Sobeys is the butcher. It's not being salted in the slot.
In the abattoir.
Right. Maybe the chickens. Chickens probably.
Yeah, chickens.
Not here. Okay, but not the big meat. Anyway.
You're sending it to your wife Erev Shabbos.
So if you send it to your wife Erev Shabbos, you're going to cause her you're going to eat treif and she's going to eat treif, because there won't be enough time to salt it, won't be enough time to treif, there won't be enough time to prepare it, make it kosher and everything else. And she knows that you want it for Shabbos, that's why you sent it to her. She wants to make her husband happy, so she's not going to tell you that she didn't have enough time for it to sit in the salt and to rinse off and all this kind of stuff. So that's a good act. That's tov. That's really becoming very raw.
Right.
And that's actually a ritual problem. Okay, so that's Basar Shen Mechutat Me'erev Shabbosos. Now, the Gemara says, wait, hold on, but Rava Meshager, but Rava, we know, did send it. We have a case where Rava did send this, and Rava is the one who says you shouldn't. So we don't have the actual case, but the Gemara obviously had some tradition that Rava would once send meat to his wife very late on Erev Shabbos, or maybe did it regularly. So how could he say not to do it when he himself does it?
Hey, there are people like that.
You can reduce the soaking and the salting time Erev Shabbos if you're stuck, to some extent.
What it means, but correct, but it means that the time is so tight.
You couldn't even do that.
Right? It's like jumping in for a quick shower before Shabbos.
Yeah.
You have a clock. You know what time you got to be out.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you didn't, you could be still under the water, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so the Gemara says, Shani Bas Rav Chisda, de Kimle Begavad the Bekia. He was married to the daughter of Rav Chisda.
He was married.
He was married to the daughter of Rav Chisda.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right. So his wife was the daughter of Rav Chisda. She was well versed in these laws. She knew how to do a chick-chock. She knew how to get right into it. She knew how to treber properly. She knew how to salt it properly. She knew she didn't waste time. She was very well adept and skilled in this. So even if she got the last minute, she wasn't flustered. She was a bekia and she could do it, so he could send it to her in the time when most people's wives would suddenly kind of run around in circles and not know what to do. Okay.
You can be sure he only did this once because she had something
Can
to say.
you tell me how they salted and they soaked the meat without a clock? How did they know exactly?
It doesn't have to be so accurate.
Salted longer than you need to salt it. How do they know what time to daven? How do they know what time was the end of davening?
Like I believe it's.
I mean, there was water clocks, there were Roman candles, there were all kinds of ways to tell time.
But it's not that. It doesn't have to be so accurate.
Correct.
Like in other words, if it's another 20 minutes or something, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Or
there
hour.
were sundials, right? Now we don't use sundials in this country because there's no sun in the winter, and the other part is the sun moves so far you'd have to constantly be readjusting where the sundial is. But in the Mideast, where there's not that much adjustment, the sundial is very accurate. So people told time, well, how do they know when to daven mincha?
Close to the equator is more accurate.
Yeah. So the answer is they could tell. They could tell when the sun was on the right side, the east side, and going to the west side. They knew right away. They saw it. How could they know the stars? How could they find constellations?
Look, if you didn't have good clocks, you learned all this stuff, right?
Correct. Right? They didn't have milliseconds and microseconds, and they didn't have Rogers time, and they didn't have central clock and atom clock. Okay, but they could tell. How could they tell if it was 6 hours after they ate meat or 5.5 hours? The answer is the same question. I don't know.
They couldn't.
Well, they estimated. They guessed. Correct. Okay, now we got time for one more Rav Yochanan, I think. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Rav Yochanan, maybe we can take us down to Bava Nation. Rav Yochanan kimat l'haikra bachi. When Rav Yochanan got the following pasuk, he cried. There's a pasuk from Dvarim, well, back in the Chumash at least. V'haya kisegreno oso ra'os rabos v'tzaros. V'yomra shirazos lefanav. This is in the Dvarim. It's the end of the Ksavim of Vayelech. Okay, so when bad things will happen to the person, so what Moshe is saying, when there are very bad things, Ra'os Rabos and Tzaros will happen, so then you'll turn to Hashem. So Evish Rabba Mamsi Lo Ra'os V'Tzaros Takana Yesh Lo. If the servant knows the master is going to bring bad, evil things to him, what hope is there for the servant? That's all he's got to look forward to. Can he ever win? How's it going to be good? Everything he does is going to be bad. Bad. You know those kind of people. So the Gemara says, but now having said that, the Gemara wants to darshan what exactly could be ra'os v'tzaros. Either it's ra'ah or sorrow. What could be, where's the case where you can't really win? It's so bad that you can't be fixed. So Amar Rav, Ra'os shenasos tzaros. When it says Ra'os v'tzaros, it means a Ra'ah that becomes a tzara. Ra'os shenasos tzaros zulazu. The Ra'ah becomes a tzara. It's a tzara one against the other. Tzara actually refers to a difficulty, but sister-in-laws are called in Masechet Yevamos, they're called tzaros, right? They're competing. In other words,
second wives.
Right, they're second wives, but they're competition. That's a tzara.
That's
is that what it comes? I thought it was the Yiddish, like.
No, it's called. It's a Gemara term. It's a Bible term.
Chana and Nina.
Are tzaros.
Yeah.
Does it say tzaros?
Yeah.
Maybe
That's where the Yiddish comes from. Could be.
I'm learning Shmuel.
Good. So the tzara with with krel. Good. So the tzara, in this case, it means here that it's not just ra'os and saros, but the saros means there's competing, like you have competing wives. So what could be a competing ra'ah and sarah? What's a ra'ah that could be a competing sarah? So the Gemara says, Kagon zibura v'yakravta. Now it doesn't really explain what this means. Like you get bitten by a zibur as a wasp, and you get bitten by a scorpion. So why is this a problem? Because they had a folk remedy that when you got bitten by a scorpion, you had to pour hot water on the bite. If you got bitten by a wasp, you had to pour cold water on the bite. And if you did the reverse, it made it worse. So if you got bitten by a wasp, and instead of pouring cold water, you pour hot water, it would make it sakana. If you got bitten by a scorpion, instead of putting hot water, you put cold water, it became more of a sakana. So here you got bitten by both, right? Bitten in the same place. So what do you do? If you pour cold water, one you be sakana from one, you pour hot water, sakana from the other. So that means this is a real tzara. This is like you can't win. That's what it means. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings you tzaros, Rav Ros with tzaros, means God is giving you such sorrow you can't get out of there. Whatever you turn, it's going to get worse. That's one example. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel gives an example. When is the raw of a tzara? Is when you give money to a poor person when he's in real tzaras. In other words, you could have given money to the ani before he ended up in real trouble, but you waited for him to really fall flat on his face, and the money is going to have less of an impact because he's in such deep trouble he can't pull himself out. Right? So you think you're doing a good deed, right? But it's really a ros v'tzaros. And hainu diamre inshe, and this is what people say. Zuza la'alalta lo shchicha v'tlisa shchiach. A money to buy tvua, to buy grain, there isn't any, but money to waste, there is some. Or that's one interpretation, Rashi says, and the other interpretation, Rashi says, is money to hang in a basket, which means you have mizonos Money to use you don't have, but money to hang around a basket as if to say you've got no food in the basket, there is. What the folk expression means that, you know what, you people wait until it's too late to spend their money. So the bottom line is, that's what the real tzara is. So I think we'll probably stop here. The Gemara has one little more piece about this pasuk, and then I believe there's a few more examples of these bad psukim and crying. Right? Okay.